welcome to a Good Luck High Five Board Games How to Play. I'm Nicholas, your GLHF game guy, and today we're looking at a prototype of Vivid from Floodgate Games right here in Minneapolis, Minnesota. While this isn't the absolute final version, it is a good representation of what your copy will look like. From designers Matthew Dunstan and Brett J. Gilbert, featuring the art of Andrew Bosley, Vivid is a game for 2 to 4 players that you should expect to play in about 45 minutes once everyone is familiar with the rules, which you're all going to be after our incredibly informative video. We separate our how to plays into 3 parts. The pitch, which will give you the setup and main thrust of the game. The play, which explains how a turn works and the game's main mechanics. And finally, the prestige, which will go over scoring and the game's end. I hope you can remember all that, because here we go. Vivid sees you and up to 3 of your childhood friends competing for points assigned to the kid who can best turn normal playtime into epic memories. To do that, you'll draft colored fragment tokens onto your brain board in an attempt to link paths locking in your long-term cherished memories. Not precious moments though, those are different. And porcelain. Efficiently using action and resource management becomes key as your fellow players take needed fragments away from you and onto their own boards. Whoever is able to pivot their plans to perfection will find themselves with the richest backstory and brightest future. Set up your preferred playing space by giving each player a brain player board. These all have different core memories along the perimeter, so you can choose which ones you want, assign them randomly, or you could even draft them. These memory bank boards will be attached to the brain boards in the final version, but for now, each player gets one of these as well. Shuffle the 5 aspiration tiles and give each one to another player secretly. You can look at them, but please don't share them with the other players. Who you want to be when you grow up is a secret. Shuffle the 20 moment tiles and place them in a stack off to the side somewhere, and then put some number of fragment tokens into the drawing bag depending on the number of players. Let each player choose a preferred sports ball score marker and place one of them near the score tracker and the other one near the player's brain board. The start player tile should go to the player whoever has the earliest memory. Vivid is played using primarily each player's recessed brain player board and the randomly assigned memory fragments on the moment tiles in the center of the table. At the beginning of every round, you'll flip over a number of these moment tiles from the shuffled stack and place them action side up to form the moment line in the center of the play space. This is the prepare phase. The number of tiles is equal to the number of players plus 2. So in our 3-player game here, we're placing down 5 tiles. From the bag, you'll randomly draw 5 fragment tokens, placing them in order on the tiles. Of note here, in a 2-player game, you just draw 4 tokens instead of 5. The second phase in a round is the remember phase. Starting with the first player, a sensible way to start any game, you will draft up to 3 tokens from the moment tiles, starting from an edge of the moment line. If you choose to take 3 tokens, they must all be of different colors from each other. Should you find yourself wanting to take 2 of the same color tokens, that's permissible, but then you don't take a third. You can also choose to take 1 token from a memory tile, which will open up an additional player action called Rewire. Regardless of how many tokens you take, all of them must be placed on a single, previously empty hex on your brain board. An empty hex can be chosen on your board, anywhere. Adjacency doesn't matter here, and neither does the arrangement of the tokens in the hex. 3 is the limit of tokens that can be placed in any hex at any time. If you drafted 2 or 3 tokens, it's now the next player's turn. If you drafted only 1 token, then before the next player drafts, you get to rewire your brain. Choose any hex on your board, and then you get to decide if you want to move tokens out of that hex into adjacent hexes, or you could move tokens into that hex from adjacent hexes. It's important to note that each hex only physically holds 3 tokens, and that a hex can never have more than that. During the rewire action, you can move as many tokens into or out of the hex you choose, up to 3. When that's done, it's the next player's turn to draft, and they can choose to start on either edge of the moment line. They don't need to continue pulling tokens from the memory the previous player chose. When you take the last token off a tile, claim that tile and place it near your brain board for later. You can then continue drafting, obeying the rules as before. Taking the last token off a tile does not end your phase. You do have to continue drafting from the same edge of the moment line you were working on when the tile was emptied, however. You can't take the last token from this tile and then continue drafting from way over here. Around and around you'll go, drafting and placing tokens, taking tiles once they're cleared until the last token and tile are claimed. When that's done, the player who would go next takes the first player tile, as they'll be the first player to draft in the next remember phase. The third phase is reflect, and this is where you'll get to manipulate your memories a little, embellishing them and making them just so. Each player will simultaneously take up to 4 actions from the memory bank. The first thing you'll do, however, before taking those actions is slot your collected moment tiles over your memory bank. Each moment tile you collected earlier has an action on it, and those are going to replace the base actions available to you, so choose wisely. If you collected no moment tiles, then you'll be able to use these base actions. You can combine 2 fragments in any hex on your board into any 1 color fragment of your choice. This could effectively also be used to remove 1 fragment you no longer want in a hex. For example, you could choose to remove a red and a purple fragment and replace those with a purple fragment. The new fragment added must go into the same hex you removed from. Your second base action is speculating. Draw a random fragment from the bag and place it into any empty hex you choose. While you can choose the hex to place it in after you draw the fragment out of the bag and see what it is, you can't choose to put it back in the bag if you don't like what you drew. It must go into an empty hex once it's been drawn. If the bag is empty, or if you have no empty hexes on your board, you cannot choose this action. Thirdly, you can nudge. This one's super easy. Take 1 fragment from any hex on your board and drop it into any adjacent hex. Keep in mind, you can't take this action to add a 4th fragment to a hex. I mentioned it earlier, and I'm probably going to say it again in a few seconds. Only 3 fragments to a hex. Always. Don't give yourself an aneurysm. The last base action you have is swap. Choose 2 adjacent hexes on your board and exchange 1 fragment from each hex. Remember, only 3 fragments to a hex. If you've overwritten your base actions with a moment tile, you have access to at least 1 of 2 new actions. If the tile has a single fragment shown, you'll take 1 fragment of that color from the supply, not the bag, and place it into any empty hex on your board. Much like speculating, if you have no empty hexes, you can't take this action. The other moment tile action is called split. You'll remove a fragment of the specified color on the tile and replace it with the 2 denoted colors from the supply. If this would cause you to have 4 fragments in a hex, which we've already covered as a no-no, you can choose which of the 2 incoming fragments stays and which one bounces off. You cannot use this action to remove a second fragment that was there when the action began. Once you take the action on a moment tile, flip it over to the scoring side. Moment tiles can only be scored once their action is taken, and they're only removed from the memory bank once they're scored, so plan carefully. Scoring points is your victory condition in Vivid, and there are exactly 4 ways to earn them. Let's look at each method individually. This is also the order in which you'll score them at the end of each round. First off, you're going to be able to score only those moment tiles that have been flipped to their scoring side. Look for the designated pattern on your brain board. If the pattern denotes 2 fragments, you'll be able to score 4 points for each hex on your board that has only those 2 fragments in it. If there's a 3rd fragment in that hex, it cannot be scored. If the pattern on the tile shows 3 fragments, you'll score 6 points for each hex that contains exactly those 3 tokens. If you scored that tile, remove it from your memory board and place it off to the side. Of note here is that if you can score these tiles, you must. You can't choose not to score them if you think you can score more hexes in a later round. Secondly, you'll score threads on your brain board. All along the perimeter of your board, you'll notice recessed slots that match the fragments you've been drafting. These are your core memories. Hexes that connect matching color core memory slots will score based on the length of the thread and how many empty memory slots are connected. In our example here, there are 7 hexes with at least 1 purple fragment in them, and they connect 2 empty purple core memories. 7 times 2 is 14 points for this thread. You will then take 1 fragment from the hex touching each core memory and fill in the recessed space. Leave all other fragments behind in the hexes. These can score additional threads in later rounds. 2 things to note in our example, specifically crafted to show you some outlying cases. 1. This thread does connect a 3rd purple core memory, but that memory has been filled in a previous round, so it doesn't score in this one. If this core memory were open, that would be 7 hexes in the thread times 3 open core memories for 21 points. Also of note here, when you're scoring threads, you're not looking for the shortest route. Any connected hex will count, so all 7 hexes still net the player points even though it isn't necessary to connect the direct dots. Continue to count as many threads as you can in each round. You can often score more than 1. Third, the reason you're trying to fill these core memories is that the clusters of them will score points at the end of every round that they're filled. A single core memory is worth 1 point at the end of each round. A double is worth 4, and a triple core memory, combining the awesome power of friendship, is worth 18 points. To reiterate, you'll score points for these clusters in the round you filled them and in every subsequent round. At the end of the third round, which signals the end of the game, you'll finally score your aspiration tile, the secret objective tile you drew at the beginning. Reveal it now to everyone and count 1 point for every fragment that matches the aspiration color on your board, even if there are more than 1 per hex. In our example, we have 9 total purple fragments, so we'll score 9 points. You will also score 2 points for each filled core memory slot on the color of the perimeter of your board. So we'll score 6 for our 3 completed purples here. Finally, you'll get 5 points for each scored moment tile that contains your aspiration color. We've collected 4 tiles in our game, but only 3 have purple in them, which means we'll get 15 points. Each player scores their aspiration, and with that, the scores are complete, and a winner is you. Thank you for watching this GLHF How to Play video. If you found it informative, please let us know in the comments. Also, please keep in mind that this is a sponsored video representing the game and rules we were given at the time of production. Changes between this game and the retail version are possible, which might affect some of the rules we went over. I'm Nicholas, reminding you to help protect the game population. Always sleeve your cards. Hey everyone, if you liked our video, please hit that sub button and ring that bell for notifications. Check out all of our other offerings at goodluckhighfive.com, and please consider becoming a patron of the channel over at patreon.com/GLHFmagic. It helps us keep making reviews, videos, podcasts, and you can become a member for any dollar amount. We're also always looking for new games to review. You can reach us at glhfmagic@gmail.com. You can follow me, Captain N, the Game Master, at CaptainNGM on Twitter and Instagram, and follow the channel at GLHFmagic. Remember, please shop at your local game store whenever possible. Until next time, I'm Nicholas, and good luck. High five.